Hey, welcome to this video series on PHP for beginners. In this video series, we're going to introduce and dive into PHP, the language. I'm going to assume in this video that you have a little bit of a background in web development somewhere, so maybe some HTML knowledge. Don't really have to know too much CSS or any JavaScript, but just some basic understanding of HTML would be helpful. In this video, we're going to answer the question, why PHP? So first of all, what is PHP? So if we look at PHP's homepage, you can see PHP, it's described as a general purpose scripting language. I would say that most of my experience with PHP, it's a server-side scripting language. And the only difference there is I think of maybe a language like Python is a little bit more general purpose, because Python is used typically in a lot of different applications, not just building web applications, but also it's used in manipulating files on the server side. It's used in doing machine learning. I would say, in my opinion, that PHP is kind of a server-side scripting language used in web applications mostly, but it is possible to build CLI apps and other applications with. It's just not as popular in those use cases as, for example, Python. So if you look here at the history of PHP, you can see the first version was released around 1994. Now, since 1994, there's been a lot of improvements in PHP, especially, say, version 7 and above or 6 and above, where the language matured a little bit and we started to get object-oriented classes, and we also got a lot of speed improvements. And in addition, they addressed a lot of security issues that were prevalent in earlier versions of PHP. So one of the fundamental questions you might ask is, well, how much of the web is powered by PHP? And so I Googled that, and you can see like 77.4%. Here is the website behind that. I'm not going to dive into that. It's the same website. But if you scroll down a little bit more, you can see PHP is the basis for almost 80% of the web. For every 10 websites you visit, 8 of those have PHP run on their backend. So enhancing your capability with PHP is a good thing. So one of the reasons why PHP is so popular on the web is there's a lot of content management systems that were built around PHP. One of the biggest and most popular one is WordPress. So all of WordPress's code is built using PHP. The themes are PHP, the plugins are PHP, the framework, the WordPress framework is all PHP. And by far, WordPress is probably the most popular content management system, but there's others. For example, Drupal is written in PHP and Joomla is also written in PHP. In addition, there's a lot of integrations with those content management systems that are also written in PHP. For example, WooCommerce is probably one of the largest plugins that you can find in use in PHP. So if you want to set up a store and sell things on your WordPress site, WooCommerce probably is the plugin or the place you would go for that. In the recent years, there's been a number of frameworks that have really propelled PHP to the forefront of development, I think. One of the most popular frameworks these days is Laravel. So Laravel makes it very easy for you to develop and build your applications using PHP. Most of the major languages these days, they all have some kind of package management system where you can integrate third-party packages into your application and kind of compose your application with these known building blocks. And PHP is no different. The package management system for PHP is called Composer. And so you can see here, that's the dependency manager for PHP. If we want to look at some of the packages that you can find in Composer, it'll go to Packages, which is the PHP package repository. And we can browse packages. So let me just browse here, packages. We can see a number of packages here. And so we can see a list of new releases, and you can get an idea of what's in here. There's new packages, just random packages, and here's a list of kind of the most popular packages. But as an example, Guzzle, is a very popular package where you can do HTTP requests using PHP. Finally, let's just cover a few pros and cons of PHP. Why do developers still use it? And here are the 7 reasons, in my opinion. There may be others, and I won't go through them all. So first of all, PHP is very easy to learn, especially if you have another language already under your belt. And that's true in general, but I find that, for example, PHP is very C-like. So if you're familiar with C, or if you're familiar with a language that supports like classes, I think when you see the syntax of PHP, it'll be familiar to you. So I'll skip a few of these here. So of course it has massive community support and cross-platform compatibility, and there's a large open source community, so it's very cost effective. One of the things that PHP has kind of a bad rep for is in the past it's not been very fast. But recently there's been a lot of performance improvements, so that's no longer the case. There's very strong database support. So regardless if you're doing a relational database like maybe MySQL or PostgreSQL, or you're doing non-structured data in a Mongo database or something like that, Redis support is there. There's a lot of libraries that already help you connect to a database and query that database. So let's look at a few reasons why some developers try to avoid PHP. So first of all, there is this outdated perception that, again, PHP is slow. It has security issues. And at one time, that was absolutely true. All the more recent versions, like 6 and above, I would say, have addressed all the security issues that were in PHP. And every release since about 6 have been improving their performance. As with any language, there's room for improvement. There is some inconsistencies when you look at PHP function naming, but those are getting better. And modern development environments, typically I start a function and then it pops up in my IDE. I don't really have to remember the whole function name. I can just start the function and the IDE will help me remember what the whole function name was called. So if you're building a modern, complex application, maybe that has some real-timeness that you would like to get to it, PHP may not be the best choice for that particular application. There are better languages that are more suitable for real time, for example, Node. And even though the ecosystem around PHP is ever evolving, we have Laravel and WordPress and all these big frameworks are happening, there's still competition from other alternatives. I don't want to say that PHP isn't modern, but it's been around for a long time. So it has that kind of sense that it's not modern, but it really is. So a lot of developers, when they hear PHP, they're thinking, oh, it's the old language. And so when they hear things like Node, they're, oh, that's new and shiny. I think that some of this competition from modern alternatives may be built on a fallacy, but anyway, I put that down there as maybe one of the reasons why some developers try to avoid PHP. And just to summarize, these are the reasons why PHP is still relevant. We covered a lot of these already. So there's been a constant evolution of the language. At the time that we're doing this recording, PHP 8.4 is released. And with every release, the language is being improved. With WordPress dominating the content management landscape, PHP will stay relevant for a very long time. One of the areas where PHP is starting to push into is enterprise applications. So more and more frameworks like Laravel are making it easier for enterprise developers to kind of develop these software as a service, or maybe it's an internal application using PHP as your backend. And we just touched base with the frameworks. It's still one of the most popular backends that's being used. One of the things that I like is hosting. If you want to deploy an application to production, the hosting options are very abundant and it's easy to deploy your PHP application to production. So in this video, we cover why PHP is still relevant. PHP isn't dead. It's just evolved. It's still a powerful tool and it's used widely in web development.